Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio, the Full Education Network, Author's Corner, as we continue to roll on to finish up today at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow, we'll broadcast live from 11 to 2:30 as we continue this awesome marathon of interviews, I guess I would say, but definitely an interesting crowd of guests and authors today. And I have my great co-host with me, Sydney Stovall. Sydney, how are you, Cindy? And it's just a really interesting discussion. And tell our listeners a little bit about your show before we get to our next guest.
Thanks so much, Neil. My show is called Beauty in the Burg, and it's based here out of St. Petersburg. So we talk all about the art, culture, theater, food, books from this area, kind of like an Austin City Limits, but about St. Petersburg.
Oh, yes. It's funny, we have two different burgs, but then you got to venture out to Pittsburgh next. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And,
you've got a burg there, too, obviously.
Yes, we do. We definitely have a burg there, too. And I was trying to figure out the burg until it finally came to me. St. Petersburg, but I'm excited to welcome the program, an author we had on last year, and we had a blast talking with, and he continues to have success. Joe Clifford. Joe, how are you, and welcome back to Author's Corner.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, absolutely. And for our listeners, tell us your background and your success of your last book, and we'll talk about the new book. But why? It's an interesting one about drugs and rock and roll, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that was last year's book was Junkie Love, which was my autobiographical memoir/novel about the time I spent in San Francisco in the 1990s on the streets as a homeless drug addict. The new book is called Lamentation, which is a mystery set in New England, and I know those two things seem pretty far apart, but I actually grew up in New England before embarking on my journey out west to follow in the footsteps of Kerouac. And it was nice to return to the setting of my youth and broach some of those themes that I wanted to tackle.
Wow, that's interesting, isn't it, Sydney? About that, Cindy, about Joe and his background, and now how he's kind of getting writing something different now.
Absolutely. So, Lamentation, you kind of take kind of an anti-hero, a guy with problems, who's the protagonist, who's sent in to kind of solve this mystery and take care of all this, but he's got some problems of his own, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the characters that always fascinate us tend to be the one with flaws, right? I
right,
mean,
absolutely.
The idea of this, the superhero, your Superman type, but I mean, I've always been more of a Batman guy. I like the damage, the psychological, the tortured. In Lamentation,
absolutely.
Jay, a porter who is based very loosely on my own half-brother, Jason Streeter, who lives up in northern New Hampshire, but he also worked in antique clearing, so I had some first-hand knowledge of how that world works. Jay, in the novel, basically clears out the belongings of people who have passed on, so it's a particularly lonely existence trying to salvage worth from people who often die alone and broken, and so that's a nice metaphor for what's going on with Jay, who's trying to reconcile with his own wife, not wife, girlfriend, who's the mother of his child, but he's never been quite able to pull the strings to make that work. So that's always driving the heart of the story, is Jay has to look for the disappearance of his own addict brother, Chris.
Right. But, I think that's a lot of the appeal for these stories, because we all can feel like maybe there is something extraordinary in us, even though our lives are complicated.
There's a real American. There's a reason we love Rocky so much, right? I mean, it's one of my favorite movies. But I think it embraces this American aesthetic of being able to take your hits and keep moving forward, and that really appeals to us as a country. And it speaks to something deeper, where maybe you don't need to have the most talent, and you don't need to have the most intelligence, but if you can withstand the hits that life keeps giving you, and somehow be at the end standing up, never going down. It's a testament to our strength and resolve, and I think that is the appeal.
Well, I think Neil knows something about that, too, from his life and career, don't you?
Yeah, yes, I know. It's something that I could have been pulled, and I could end up in the same type of lifestyle, and maybe down broken like Joe if I wouldn't have met my wife, because in wrestling, and then I became an educator from that, but wrestling definitely can bring out the worst in people in certain aspects, and especially the road and being exposed to specific things. That just happens for sure, you know?
That was actually, Chris in the novel Lamentation was a Olympic hopeful for wrestling before he falls on hard times, which is based on my own brother Josh, who was a Olympic hopeful back in the 1990s. And yeah, wrestling. So we knew that world just in my family and how hard it was. And I remember my brother, having to make weight and putting on the bags, and this was in high school, the hefty bags so he could make weight to the matches, and then how draining it was for him physically and emotionally doing that.
And that's the situation in pro wrestling. Again, the beat up, the injuries, the people call it fake. It's not, with the chair shots and the barbed wire matches and the wear and tear in your body. The only way you could keep doing it is through painkillers and anabolic steroids and so many other drugs and alcohol, the mix and all those things. It's important. So it's important to look at, Joe, and show people life happens, especially in certain situations, and a lot of people can't handle pain, so they have to self-medicate themselves. They have to do specific things, and that's the only way to make it through. So, Joe, I can't believe we are about to have to take a break, but, Joe, where's the best place we can purchase a book and learn about you and learn more about you? And I'm so glad for the continued success for you, and I hope to have a chance to talk to you again next year in Miami.
I hope so. It's joeclifford.com. My name, JoeClifford. That's where everything that's happening in my life and my world, I blog pretty much, my life as it happens, and all my work is available there. And, of course, you'll find booksellers everywhere you can get Lamentation.
All right. Well, Joe, good talking to you, man. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, nice talking to you guys.
All right.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
You're listening to Author's Corner, powered by Life Improvement Radio, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening. Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.